Hi guys, in this video we're going to be continuing to look at how to calculate percentages of a whole number, but we're going to be working with some slightly more complicated percentages. Now, the main takeaway point for today is that 10% is your gateway percentage. What I mean by that is if you can work out 10% of a number, which you can easily do just by dividing by 10, you can then work out all the other percentages that you will need to work out. So if I know 10%, I could work out 20% by timesing it by 2. I could work out 30% by getting my answer and timesing it by 3. I could work out 70% by timesing it by 7. I could work out 5% by dividing my answer by 2, because 5% is half of 10%. I could work out 1% by dividing it by 10, because 1 is 10 times less than 10. I could even use that to work out half a percent, 0.5%, by dividing 1% by 2. So if I've worked out 10%, which we do just by dividing by 10 because it's a tenth of the number, I can work out all these other percentages. So let's try applying this. So our first example here is to calculate 15% of 80. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to use 10% as my gateway percentage. So up here, I'm going to create a note of what 10% of 80 is. So 10% of 80 is 8. Okay, so that's my gateway percentage. I know that 10% of 80 is 8. But I'm being asked what 15% is. Well, I can use this gateway percentage to help me, because what 15% is 10% of 80 plus 5% of 80. So all I need to do is work out 10% and then use that to work out 5%. So 10% of 80, I've done it already. It's 8. 5% of 80 is going to be 8 divided by 2, because 5 is half of 10. So if I've got 10%, I work out 5% by dividing it by 2. So we really have 8 plus 4, and so our final answer is 12. So 15% of 80 was 10% plus 5% of 80, 8 plus 4, which is 12. But it all came from, first of all, working out our gateway percentage. Okay, so I'm now being asked what is 35% of 40. Now, the way I see it is 35% of 40 is 30% of 40 plus 5% of 40. Now, the very first thing I'm going to do is just work out what 10% is. So up here, I'm going to start off working out 10%. So 10% of 40, well that's 4, because it's 40 divided by 10, and it's 4. So that means that 30% is going to be 3 times 4. And 5% is going to be half of 4. So it's going to be 4 divided by 2. So let's start working this out. 3 times 4 is 12, so 30% is 12. 5% is 2. So that means that 35% is 30%, which is 12, 5%, which is 2, 14 is our total. And it really helps just to work out our gateway percentage first of all. What about 11% then? 11% of 65. Well, again, we're going to start off with our gateway percentage, 10% of 65. And 10% of 65 would be 6.5. A little bit trickier because we now have a decimal involved, but still all the same things apply. So, 11%, what is that really? It's a 10% of 65 plus a 1% of 65. Now, the 10% I've already done. It's 6.5. The 1% is going to be 10 times less because we've got 10%, so to get 1% we have to divide by 10. So it's going to be 6.5 divided by 10. So really what we have is 6.5 plus 0.65. Remembering, of course, that when we divide by 10, everything moves down a column. So the unit is going to move into the 10th column, and the 10th is going to move down into a hundredths column. So we actually have 0.65. Lastly then, we just need to add these together. So, if we were unsure, we could easily do it as a formal addition sum, but just for quickness, we'll work it out here. So that'd be 5, this would be 11, it would be 7.15 for this answer here. So 11% of 65 was 10% plus 1%, and once we worked it out, we got 7.15. One final trickier example then. 17.5% of 400. Now, starting off, gateway percentage, 10% of 400 is 40. So I can use that to work out everything else. But the question is, how do I chunk down 17.5%? Well, there's different ways of doing it. I could do it as a 10, a 5, a 2, and a 0.5. Or I could do it as a 10, a 5, 2 1s, and a 0.5. Either way is valid. I'm going to choose the top method. So I'm going to work out 10% plus 5% plus 2% plus 0.5% of 400. So the 10% is done for me. It's 40. The 5%, I take the 10% and I half it. So I get 20. The 2%, I take my 40 and I'm going to divide it by 5, because to turn a 10 into a 2, I divide it by 5. So 40 divided by 5 is 8. And lastly then, my 0.5. I'm going to take 40, I'm going to divide it by 10, which gets me 1%, so that's 4. But then I'm going to divide it by 2 to get 0.5%, which is going to be 2. So 1% is 4, so 0.5% is 2. And now I have all the information I need to actually work out the answer. So 40 plus 20 is 60, plus 8, 68, plus 2, 70. So 17.5% of 40, we worked out 10, 5, 2, and 0.5%. The answer, 70. The key though, in all of these examples, has been to use 10% as our gateway percentage, which helps us work out all of the other percentages that we need to know.